Hope no more than 15 minutes would be. Okay. Down to 7.
Okay, we're good.
Great. Okay, so we've got Mr. Mugford and we're into the operational budget. And before break, we were on to, I believe, the discussion about murals and utility boxes. Somebody correct me if that's not where we were. We were. Okay, so. You want to say anything on the topic? It hasn't been said. We had the $20,000, I believe. The director had said the 20,000 would just go into general revenue if not allocated within this, or general reserve if not allocated within this budget.
That's correct. So I do want to point out that, and I mentioned this earlier on in the process, but on an overall basis, when you normalize for some of the changes, now we're presenting some of this information, we are contributing less to our, basically to our reserves for capital replacement as part of the 2024 budget than we did in 2023. It's still sufficient to meet what our capital needs are for this year, and we're paying more on our long-term debt. So, you know, those are both positive things. We're not having to, based on our budget, draw on our existing reserves to pay for our 2024 capital replacement, but the amount that we're contributing has decreased. And so, again, all things being equal, we want to keep that amount consistent with prior years. We'd be looking at a much larger increase to our municipal requisition. And so that's why, you know, the targeted, the number that we initially put forward, 3% as a target, that's as much based on a plan for lower capital expenditures for 2024, in combination with an understanding that, you know, the taxpayer in this community, you know, we are on the higher end when you look at where our neighbors and similar sized communities are at. And you know, their ability to pay and pressures that they're experiencing. You know, a lot of our taxpayers are feeling the same pressure on utilities and those types of food costs, things like that, things that they have no control over. So, you know, my recommendation would be that those funds be put into reserves, and you know, that reduction would go into reserves for future year capital needs.
Thank you. Okay, good here.
Just I think the last comment was Councillor Scamahorn talking about people would be unhappy if we didn't do a mural. I think that the people of Peace River are under enough financial strain that they would understand putting the mural off for a year or so. I think that the people of Peace River are much more intelligent than that, and I think that they would understand in times of that we want to cut back. I really do, and I like that it went to the reserves. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Councillor Scamahorn.
To clarify my words, I didn't say people would be unhappy if we didn't do one. I said that people are happy when we do them. I think there's a difference.
Okay, other comments? Okay, at this point in time, it looks like the 20,000 would go to reserves and be perhaps relooked at in the 2025 budget. Realizing we've got a 5-year capital budget that will be coming forward next week. and a 3-year operating budget as well, right?
Just for clarity, they would be plans, not budgets.
In the past, when we've had those plans come forward, they've also included the plan for where the monies might come from. So will that, I understood that that was not happening, or is it happening?
So at this point, we've got a list of identified capital projects. Some of them, there's potentially areas that we'd be able to apply grant funding for. But at this point, it's really about getting a firm list of here's our top priority for infrastructure replacement and getting that information before council. The MGA doesn't speak specifically to what these plans need to include. It does need to be for capital minimum 5 years. But it doesn't speak specifically to how you can fund those expenditures.
I personally would kind of like to know some possible funding. And I realize that MSI is changing, and who knows what the new MSI in a few years will be, because it's very dependent on the Alberta province's revenues, I guess you'd say, or net at the end of it. But
When I do present this next week, I'll speak to some of the assumptions. So when I
Okay.
started presenting the budget this year,
mhm,
I started with, here's all the assumptions that go into building this
Yeah.
budget. The further out we go into the future, the wider the range is, and the more risk that there is in certain areas. And I'll speak to all of that next week. I did want to get clarity from council. Our practice generally is if something is in the budget, to leave in the budget for next year if it's a recurring item. For the murals, if I'm hearing that you want it removed for 2024, do you want that included as part of the operating plan that I bring back as a reoccurring item, or do you want that removed to be potentially brought back in the future, but not built into that budget, or sorry, built into that plan?
I would like it built into the plan for 2025 and onwards, and have the discussion there about me. Any thoughts?
Again, the operating plans they're not binding. Every budget will be approved on its own. I just wanted that clarity. Okay, thank you.
Okay, negative, so, anything further on the operating? Okay, then at this point, I would ask that someone bring forth a, motion to accept the draft 2024 operating, budget for information.
So move just as you stated.
Okay, Councillor Ford so moves, and I had draft 2024 operating in there, I'm hoping.
Yep.
All those in favor? It is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Mumford, and the rest of your staff for managing to get us this far at the beginning of December. Very good. Okay, now we have reports, and the first report is a Northern Alberta elected leaders meeting minutes. That is from last June. So it's rather outdated, but this group only meets a couple of times, well, maybe 3 times a year. So can't say much about that, but does anybody have any further questions on it? We did have an NAEL meeting a couple weeks ago. Lots of ministers turned up there, including our NLA. We had a presentation on the ambulances for Northern Alberta and things like that. We had information from the Reeve of the County of Grand Prairie that Claremont had now reached their 5,000 person population. So therefore they got to have, or they have to have, a detachment. And with this detachment will be an expansion to an ordinary town detachment to accommodate the move from Grand Prairie Regional Grand Prairie Police to that detachment, so they will have a bigger detachment than usual. I did ask Commissioner Zablockley about that, and basically he said it boiled down to, well, we have so many staff in Grand Prairie, so they have all these connections to Grand Prairie. It would be very hard to move them away from all those connections. So he assured me that Peace River would always be considered for different programs within the RCMP, including the fact that we apparently have a traffic program here that is in operation. So good to know. That's all I know on that one. Peace Regional Aboriginal Interagency Committee meeting of September 19th. Are there any questions there? The last one, Northern Lakes Community College Education Committee. Any questions on that one? Okay, then maybe someone would move that council accept reports 9-1 through 9-3 for information. I can do that. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. All those in favor? It is carried. Information. I wanted to speak a little bit about the first item, provincial consultations on local authorities election act and the MGA. I think I have sent all council an email on this from President of AM, and he asked that all councils and individual councillors, general public, whoever, fill out the survey, the 2 surveys on the Local Authorities Election Act and the MGA if they so want. And just to remind people, the Election Act, they're surveying and what responses on things like supporting the use of political parties in municipal governments, advanced voting procedures or not, making voter lists available to candidates. This implies whether or not a candidate could get the voter list and then target individual candidates, I guess. The rules for postponement of local elections, this came up due to the basically wildfires and floods. If those things are occurring during the election, can somebody put off the election until things are safe again? You can ask or respond to that one. The use of special ballots, this includes mail-in ballots, things like that. The using of runoff elections for the position of mayor or reeve. So basically this is as some, well, different political parties frankly do. The top 2 candidates get their votes, and then there's another election between those top 2 candidates to decide who is the actual mayor or reeve. So those questions are in the survey. You have until December 6th to fill out the survey, which happens to be Wednesday. Wow. So, and I did it in 10-15 minutes at the most, sort of thing. Potential changes to the Municipal Government Act. So mandating orientation training for councillors, expanding the ability for councils to meet in private, authority for the minister to remove a councillor, changes to recall legislation, rules for councillors to disclose business interests or other personal history, rules for councillor disqualification, and clarifying councillor conflicts of interest. So all of those topics are there for you to put your thoughts down. And some of these topics, you know, in our past election, there was questions about this and that. Some of these topics are on that list. So if you want to put your information in, you should do so. And I think this has the site. So any questions with respect to that? Okay, maybe someone could move that council accept item 10-1 for information. Councillor Carso moves. All those in favor? It is carried. And unfinished. Let's put myself in order here. Key communication items. So maybe all 3 draft budgets have been passed for information with hopefully final determination on December 11th. We might have something coming out of close or not. Anything else that somebody wants to mention? We had 7 applications to grants to organization and hopefully within, I guess it has to be next week that we deal with these, Director Bell. Would it be next week that we would get the presentations, sorted out for grants to organizing groups?
The applications will be
Yeah.
moving forward
Okay.
on Monday, correct?
How much money is left in that fund?
Approximately 35,000. Yeah.
Was it 50,000 to begin with, or
Correct.
this year it was 35 or
No,
50?
50.
It was
Yeah.
50. Okay. Okay, anything else somebody wants to bring forward?
That's
as-
just the last,
Oh, the taxi pass. We had major discussion on the taxi pass, which is a policy which will be coming forward also on December 11th. Anything else?
This qualifies as a communication item. So Minister Nixon, they had a event in his family and he's kind of moving, aside from his current portfolio. And we had a very good discussion with him at, AM. And Mr. Williams is kind of picking up some of the, things that are going to get left behind on that. Just perhaps we could write a letter of support to Minister Nixon and his family and around that, situation that they encountered there.
I understand that his 2 younger children were in some sort of accident. One is, doing medical. You're suggesting that we.
Well, it's a communication item. I wasn't sure where else to put it. We,
So do you want us to, do you want to give motion for us to write a letter or?
yeah,
expression of
just an expression of, yeah,
Well wishes.
thank you.
So, you're making a motion to that effect?
If one is required,
I think one would be.
And also support to Minister Williams, you said?
well, if that fits, the other part of the release today was that Mr. Williams was moving into that portfolio, taking over some of the duties for that portfolio.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All those in favor? It is carried. Okay, we've got the communication items then probably, and I think we can now again move into closed. Okay, so who wants to move us into closed this time? Councillor Carso moves at 8:20. All those in favor? It is carried. Thank you.
I don't get the. Was that on our news release today?
Yes, I missed that.